Voice of Korea.
This is Voice of Korea.
This is Voice of Korea.
Now we begin the English language transmission from Pyongyang, the capital of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
We'll present mixed colors. Song of General Kim Il-sung. Paris, son of General Kim Jong-il. You are listening to Voice of Korea News Now. Respected Kim Jong-un's revolutionary activities were reported abroad between March 22nd and 24th. The Chinese News Service and Hong Kong Phoenix Satellite Television and the Japanese Gyodo News reported of its field guidance to the Ryugyong Dental Hospital and the Anya Children's Hospital. The Chinese Internet homepage News Network and the Russian newspapers Rossiyskaya Gazeta, Moskovsky Komsomolets, and Novaya Gazeta, Radio Mayak, and Internet News Miri Politika, Rosbag, Renta.ru, Gazeta.ru, Vesti.ru, and Utro.ru reported of its appreciation of a performance of the Moranbong Band at the April 25th House of Culture. The Chinese Internet homepage News Network posted a photo of Kim Jong-un appreciating the performance of the Moranbong Band together with the service persons of the Korean People's Army. The Romanian National Preparatory Committee was recently formed in Bucharest to celebrate the Day of the Sun, the birth anniversary of President Kim Il-sung. And the Bangladesh Preparatory Committee was also formed for the same purpose at the joint proposal of the Workers' Party, the Communist Party, and the People's League of Bangladesh, and the Bangladesh-Korea Friendship and Solidarity Committee. Meanwhile, preparatory committees for celebrating the Day of the Sun were formed at the Older Persons Association for Korean Cultural Tradition in Uzbekistan on the 18th, and at the Khabarovsk Territorial Committee of the Communist Party of the Russian Federation on the 20th. The National Symposium was held at the People's Palace of Culture in Pyongyang on the 27th to make a deep study of the ideas and theories and thoroughly implement the tasks outlined in the famous work of respected Marshal Kim Jong-un. Let us hasten the final victory through a revolutionary ideological offensive. Present at the symposium were officials of central and Pyongyang City Party and administrative organs and working people's organizations and officials of the armed forces organs, institutions of science, education, literature and arts, the press and revolutionary relics preservation and party official training institutions. Papers were read out at the symposium, profoundly explaining and demonstrating the originality, scientific accuracy, and truthfulness of the ideas and theories outlined in the historical speech made by Kim Jong-un at the 8th Conference of Ideological Workers of the Workers' Party of Korea. The 4th National Technical Innovation Exhibition of the Three Revolution Teams closed at the Three Revolution Exhibition House in Pyongyang on the 27th. Present at the closing ceremony were Kim Pyong-hye, Secretary of the Central Committee of the Workers' Party of Korea, officials concerned, exemplary Three Revolution Team members, and officials of the institutions that dispatched the teams. Pennants, trophy cups, certificates, and relevant prizes were awarded to the highly estimated institutions, Three Revolution Team members, and officials. A national scientific and technological presentation on protection of underground resources was held at the People's Palace of Culture in Pyongyang on the 27th. Present there were officials and technicians in the field of the protection of underground resources and teachers and researchers of scientific and educational institutions. Certificates and prizes were awarded to the presenters of excellent papers at the presentation. The spokesman for the General Staff of the Korean People's Army answered the Korean Central News Agency on the 28th. The spokesman said, 22 horsepower fishing boat 539-524-56 of the Ongjin Fishery Station engaged in normal fishing operation in the waters around Mahap Island in Ongjin County Thursday night lost a sea route due to engine trouble and tried to find out direction. At the time, military ruffians belonging to the Second Fleet of the South Korean Navy crossed the maritime military demarcation line of the DPRK all of a sudden, firing more than 50 bullets at random. They rushed upon the fishing boat, beat our fishermen with iron bars to faint, shackled their hands, blinded their eyes, and dragged the boat to the Pyongyang Island. They forcibly captured the boat, wielding iron hooks. The problem is that such a sea robbery was intentionally committed against a peaceful fishing boat drifting due to loss of a sea route, and despite our fishermen's announcement that they have no will to surrender. Grasping the reality of the situation, the General Staff of the Korean People's Army sent an emergency warning message through inter-Korean military communication line in the West Sea area to the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the South Korean Army on 22 hours 20 minutes Thursday, demanding immediate return of our peaceful fishing boat while taking military countermeasures. The perplexed ruffians of the South Korean Navy told lies and excuses, saying the fishing boat illegally crossed the northern limit line and they captured the boat as it disobeyed despite repeated warnings until they informed us of the time and place of the delivery. After all, our fishing boat and its crew came back to the motherland at 1 hour 28 minutes on the 28th. Our crewmen ruffians for surrender do not come to their senses yet. For instance, of all ships fishing in full account with the shuddering brutalities of the South Korean naval ruffians, the spokesman added. The National Reunification Institute in the DPRK issued a memorandum under the title United States Disturber of Dialogue and Peace denounced on the 27th, exposing criminal nature of the United States as regards its moves to undermine North-South dialogue and damp the tendency toward reconciliation and reunification whenever they happen historically. The spokesman for the Central Committee of the General Federation of Trade Unions of Korea gave a statement to media on the 27th, concerning the crimes of the South Korean military ruffians who fired bullets and shells around the 5 islands on the West Sea of Korea, including the Pyongyang and Daejeon Islands, and scattered leaflets maliciously slandering the DPRK on the 24th. The statement said, "It is an intolerable insult and declaration of war against the entire service personnel and people of Korea, including our workers, that the South Korean military ruffians scattered dirty leaflets, maliciously slandering the sacred dignity of our supreme leadership and system. The South Korean puppets scattered leaflets in the hottest zone, synchronizing with the nostalgic nuclear war forces. It is an intentional and planned confrontation racket against the DPRK. The South Korean conservativists, whenever an atmosphere of reconciliation and peace was created on the Korean peninsula, instigated the filthy human scums to scatter leaflets against the DPRK, justified their confrontation moves with the so-called freedom of speech, and obstructed improvement of inter-Korean relations. Although an agreement on putting an end to mutual slanders was reached at the inter-Korean high-level contact in February, the South Korean military made an open challenge, insisting that the psychological warfare against the North is one thing and slanders another. The reality shows once again that as long as the South Korean military warhawks maliciously slander our sacred and dignified system and persist in confrontation with fellow countrymen, neither peace of the Korean peninsula nor improvement of the inter-Korean relations can be expected. No matter how precious the inter-Korean relations and peace may be, there will be no permission, no concession concerning the issue related with the dignity of our supreme leadership. It is the strong faith and will of the Korean army and the people, the statement stressed. According to the South Korean Yonhap News, on March 24th, data were disclosed to prove that the sexual slavery for the Imperial Japanese Army was enforced according to the Japanese imperialist law on national mobilization, enacted for the purpose of meeting the needs of human and material resources for escalating the war of aggression. This fact was disclosed when the Jilin Provincial Archives of China opened to public some time ago 25 papers concerning the sexual slavery for the Imperial Japanese Army, after they were declassified out of the documents that had been left behind by the command of the former Kwantung Army of Japan. According to the South Korean internet newspaper Minbo, the People for Peace and Reunification of South Korea held an emergency press conference in front of the building of the Ministry of National Defense in protest against the purchase of U.S.-made weapons for preemptive attack. Referring to the decision of the authorities on purchasing U.S.-made reconnaissance drones and F-35A fighters, speakers at the press conference said it will further increase the possibility of war on the Korean peninsula. Meanwhile, the South Korean Pyongyang Daily News said that the 12th Parish Priest Group of the South Korean Catholic Priests Council for Justice held a mass on the situation in Sunja City, North Cholla Province on the 24th, in demand of the resignation of the South Korean Chief Executive. The Nigerian National Committee for the Study of the Tzuchi Idea recently posted on its website an article titled "Stability of Korean Society." The article said, "It is thanks to the Tzuchi Idea, the guiding idea of Korea, the single-minded unity of the Korean society, and the popular policy now in force in Korea, that Korea is invariably advancing along the road of socialism without any socio-political instability despite harsh trials of history. The Korean people love and value their social system like the apples of their eyes, and are ready to devote even their lives without hesitation to defend it," the article stressed. And that's the end of the news, read by Kim Hyun-ok. This is Voice of Korea. The Daily Rodong Shimun of the DPRK on Friday carried a commentary under the title, "We have no news resume as regards another outburst on DPRK's threat and provocation made by the U.S. Department of Defense." The commentary said in June. Some time ago, the U.S. Department of Defense made public a report on examination of 4-year defense strategy, in which it described the long-range missile program and development of nuclear weapons of the DPRK as a great threat to peace and stability of the Korean Peninsula and Northeast Asia, and an increasing threat to the United States. Since its military occupation of South Korea, the United States loudly talked about threat and provocation of the DPRK when it was a non-nuclear state, as well as now when it is a nuclear state. The United States schemes to deploy 60% of its naval force in the Asia-Pacific region by 2020. Such a scheme has been stressed again in the recent report as well. The United States is talking again about threat and provocation of the DPRK as a pretext to implement the strategy of attaching importance to the Asia-Pacific region presented by the Obama administration. According to the strategy, the first goal of attack is to remove the nuclear deterrent force of the DPRK, the gateway to the continent. The United States is so stupid as to think that it can suffocate the DPRK in league with South Korea and Japan. The more frantically the United States persists in the implementation of the strategy of attaching importance to the Asia-Pacific region, the more greatly our efforts will be strengthened to bring us to total bankruptcy. That was the gist of the commentary under the title, "We have no neutral zone," carried by the Daily Rodong Shinmun of the DPRK on Friday. This is Voice of Korea. Dear listeners, we inform you that from 3 hours UTC on March 30th, 2014, the English language service of Voice of Korea from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea will broadcast on the following changed frequencies. For Southeast Asia, between 5 and 6 hours UTC on 13,650 kHz and 15,105 kHz, and between 10 and 11 hours UTC on 11,735 kHz and 13,650 kHz. For Middle East and Northern Africa, between 16 and 17 hours UTC on 9,890 kHz and 11,645 kHz, and between 19 and 20 hours UTC on 9,875 kHz and 11,635 kHz. For Southern Africa, between 19 and 20 hours UTC on 7,210 kHz and 11,910 kHz. And for Central and South America, between 4 and 5 hours UTC on 11,735 kHz, 13,760 kHz, and 15,180 kHz, and between 10 and 11 hours UTC on 11,710 kHz and 15,180 kHz. We inform you that from 3 hours UTC on March 30th, 2014, the English language service of Voice of Korea from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea will broadcast on the following changed frequencies. For Southeast Asia, between 5 and 6 hours UTC on 14,105 kHz, and between 10 and 11 hours UTC on 11,735 kHz and 13,650 kHz. For Middle East and Northern Africa, between 16 and 17 hours UTC on 9,890 kHz and 11,645 kHz, and between 19 and 20 hours UTC on 9,875 kHz and 11,635 kHz. For Southern Africa, between 19 and 20 hours UTC on 7,210 kHz and 11,910 kHz. and for Central and South Americas between 4 and 5 hours UTC on 11,735 kHz, 13,760 kHz, and 15,180 kHz, and between 10 and 11 hours UTC on 11,710 kHz and 15,180 kHz. We've just informed you of the changed frequencies which will be used from March 30th, 2014. Please persuade a female Shaolin person. We cannot live without him. Your string quartet, right from the Party Central Committee.
you will enjoy the song We Will Travel One Road Forever, created in Chiche 70 Island in 81. song, My Motherland. Female solo in Pangcheng, the motherland will know you.
symphony and small orchestra. I will remain your son forever.
denunciation against American-style arrogance. Many countries are strongly rejecting and protesting against the World Human Rights Report made public by the United States some time ago. The Egyptian Ministry of Foreign Affairs strongly criticized the United States for impertinently slandering the human rights of Egypt. Algeria, as to the recent U.S. report which slandered its human rights issue, refuted the argument of the United States, saying that Algeria has the qualification to correctly analyze and estimate its human rights situation and mention its shortcomings. The Ethiopian government denounced that the 2014 U.S. report on human rights of Ethiopia is quite worthless, as it is annual one which repeated groundless assertions. The government exposed that the report is said to have been drafted on the basis of reliable sources and evidences of declarers, but the declarers are extreme distant terminal abroad against the government. They are a handful of remnants pursuing the political purpose to topple the legitimate Ethiopian government, is stressed. The Ethiopian government said that the recent acts of the United States let it reconsider the relations between the two countries and that it doubts the loud talk of the United States about the bilateral relations. China made public 2013 U.S. human rights record in defiance to the United States and disclosed all kinds of human rights abuses of the United States, denouncing it as the most barbarous human rights violator in the world and the first target to be condemned for its human rights violations on the earth. The Ecuadorian Minister of Foreign Affairs rejected the U.S. denunciation of the human rights issue of his country and exposed that the United States is committing immoral crimes such as illegal arrest, tortures in secret prisons, and illegal blockade on Cuba. Iran maintained that the U.S. World Human Rights Report is part of its smear campaign, and all human rights abuses committed by the United States at terminal abroad are an urgent issue to be dealt with at international court of justice, and the U.S. authorities should be put in human rights dock. Now the United States professes itself to be human rights judge nobody recognizes or desires because it has the ulterior intention to emphasize the human rights issue, besmirch the images of the countries concerned, and get the pretext of interference. The international community spits at the insolent United States, obsessed with extreme arrogance in invading and plundering other countries. The United States persists in all sorts of plots and moves to invade others, but the responsibility for all their consequences will go to itself. The United States should bear this in mind. You've been listening to an account under the title, Curse and Denunciation Against American-Style Arrogance. This is Voice of Korea.
With this, we conclude the English language service of Voice of Korea from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Voice of Korea presents its English language service for Southeast Asia between 5 and 6 hours UTC on 13,650 kHz and 15,105 kHz, and between 10 and 11 hours UTC on 6,185 kHz and 9,850 kHz. For Middle East and Northern Africa, between 16 and 17 hours UTC on 9,890 kHz and 11,645 kHz, and between 19 and 20 hours UTC on 9,875 kHz and 11,635 kHz. For Southern Africa, between 19 and 20 hours UTC on 7,210 kHz and 11,910 kHz. And for Central and South America, between 4 and 5 hours UTC on 11,735 kHz, 13,760 kHz, and 15,180 kHz. And between 10 and 11 hours UTC on 6,170 kHz and 9,435 kHz. Goodbye, this is Pyongyang.